The title of my presentation is on leadership disruptive time and also looking at from entrepreneur's perspective, what are things that you should be looking for, some of the disruptive impact. Whether it could be the COVID-19, which may end hopefully by next year, then you have the disruptive impact of the digital transformation will continue. And of course, the next one is the climate crisis, and we may have another pandemic. We do not know, and it's possible. And Bill Gates has warned us, WHO has warned us, and there will be possibly another pandemic. So, what lessons can we learn? How can we do as business leaders, entrepreneurs? How can we take away from this current disruptive world that we are in today? I want to go into this. I think Roger has introduced me, and these are the two books on the left. We should Disruptive Time and Transforming Next Generation from Amazon, and you can Google it. So let me start with very important entrepreneur as business leader. Over the years, and I've talked to my students, my postgrad students, top business entrepreneurs, people do not really understand what is disruption and disruptive innovation. So in fact, Clayton Christensen, Harvard Business School professor, who wrote a book on innovative dilemma, and he just passed on recently, not it was early this year, he passed on. But he wrote an article in Harvard Business School several years back to share his frustration. His view that a lot of people, even business leaders, even academics, do not really understand. I won't talk about that. So we are very clear. What exactly is disruptive innovation? There's a lot of innovative business, but not all business are disruptive. So that's very important. And we can talk about that. So I can start off looking at in today's context. So we talk about disruption. What's your view? One word that would describe or that you will associate with disruption?
Disturbance, Professor. Troublesome. It means new. It's I like this word, asunder. But it means creativity, reframing. It means interruption or interference. It means to pivot or to change. It requires problems that may arise and bring disorder and mayhem. It's distortion. It's problematic. It's creating undisciplined situation. And disarrangement, there's a barrier, there's trouble, hindrance or trouble. That means time to change the traditional way. So saying confusion, disturbance or problems, hindrances, mostly negative. And then someone said discord, disarrangement. You know, someone said, what? Stop. No way. All right, so retardation, this is word. Barrier, inconvenience, turmoil, I think that's a heavy word. Turmoil, yeah.
Thank you, Roger. I think excellent. I think Ranjit talked about reframing, like Ranjit simply says new, and I love talk about discord. I think some of it is very interesting, and I like if you just talk about hindrance. But I think some of the common thing that we hear, barrier, chaos, disorder, these are the words that we hear always. And it's very, if you look at the COVID-19, it's really is a disruptive force. Many of us never anticipate. And one of the things that I realized that when I hear all over the world, political leaders, business leaders, they use the word unprecedented. And this is what I'll talk about, because the more I go into this, listening to political leaders worldwide, and a lot of them talk about the word unprecedented, and this is simply an excuse because they do not know what they do not know. They all have blind spot, and this is the biggest problem. There's no playbook that we can rely on to manage the disruption that's caused by the pandemic. Many people try to relate that this in Hong Kong, Singapore, in this part in China, looking at SARS. And, many got it wrong. Many thought it would not be as contagious or as fatal as SARS, but you have seen the impacts. And every single week, the new research findings worldwide. So the disruption that is caused by COVID-19 is real when we are experiencing it. So to put in context from a business perspective, so if you look at the definition from Cambridge Dictionary, it's very simple. Disruption is the action of completely, see the word completely changing the traditional way of doing business, whether in industry or in market, which operate using new methods of technology. So this is from a business disruptive technology standpoint. And even before COVID, we have seen, and actually COVID-19 has accelerated the disruption caused by the digital technology or the digital revolution. And he has made us more aware. And actually, he is an enabler. As we today, we look at, we are using, as we are speaking right now, we are using the Zoom, the various technological platform to communicate with our colleagues, work from home. Or I prefer the word work from, in my book, I talk about work from anywhere, based on Harvard Business School research. Even before the pandemic, work from home is not as beneficial as compared to work from anywhere, which has both a temporal and a geographic flexibility in time and in place. And the disruption that we are facing today, we have not yet fully experienced the impact of COVID-19 and also the disruption of the digital revolution on the future of work. In my next book, the next edition I'm looking at, is to look at the impact of the technological revolution on the disruption to the future of work or the future workplace, from jobs to business processes to how we redefine roles in organization. Now, in my book, I talk about one of the things about disruption. We look at what's happening in COVID-19. And of course, before then, we're looking at the digital transformation, the disruption caused by digital transformation. And what is interesting is that we are trying to understand what are the impact of the disruption, the digital transformation on leadership development. So that's when I went into the high potential, the looking at what are some of the best practices organization. And again, entrepreneurs can learn in terms of putting in place the right culture when you're leading a young entrepreneurial team. What are some of the disruptive leadership competencies that you need to demonstrate? It's very important because we cannot use the set of values, the competency that has been around for many years in the disruptive environment, what we call the need to demonstrate, leaders, entrepreneurs and leaders need to demonstrate the disruptive mental agility. And I'll talk about that and what are the suite of competency and skills. Let me go into Christensen's definition in his book, Evil's Dilemma. And he talked about, very interesting, he said that everybody needs to understand what is disruptive innovation. As an entrepreneur, you need to understand that in today's context. But unfortunately, a lot of people use the word very loosely. And as I said, in his book, in 1997, and in the Harvard Business Review article in 2015, and he revisited and he talked about that. And that many people misunderstood. And I'll talk about the example of Netflix and Uber. And start thinking now which is disruptive and which is not. And I'll talk about that. And the definition that we use is that when we talk about disruptive innovation, we look at a new player, new entrant, which initially offer a very simple service or simple application of a service, which they move up into an untested and unmarketed segment, a blue ocean, which would then disrupt the competitors or the incumbent. And this is very important because a lot of things that you're seeing, for example, I talk about example of Netflix and Uber, and why one of them it has a disruptive innovation service, while the others is not. And we'll talk about that in a short while more. And if you look at a lot of companies, I feel Kodak. I can name you, look at the Fortune 500, a lot of companies that feel no longer exist. Look at Nokia. It's very sad. Look at Nokia, what's happening. And many of these organizations fail to reinvent themselves because they are facing challenged by these new players, new ventures, entrepreneurial ventures, new startups, which tremendously change the way things being done. And because most of these big organizations, large established organizations, are not nimble enough, not agile to move and to reinvent themselves quickly. And it's about time to market. And this is the biggest challenge because when we have an organization that is so entrenched in the way they work, how do you change and move? You need to be nimble. And this is a challenge that we face in a lot of organizations today. They are not able to reinvent. And look at taxi company, how Grab is able to reinvent in that space, not only from transportation into food, into all the various industry segments. And again, now, I mean, as I mentioned earlier, I'm going to ask you now, if you look at the earlier definition of by Christensen of what is called disruptive innovation, which is indeed disruptive, Netflix or Uber?
Okay, I'll just go. Uber, 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 Uber. I hope you're all right. Uber, Uber,
Wow.
Uber. Oh my God. Okay. Oh, Netflix came into the picture. Netflix, Netflix. 1 out of 3 is Netflix, and 2 out of 3 is Uber.
My grad students, in workshop when I organize this program on leadership disruptive times, the answers I get exactly what you guys wrote. Most of them think is over. And of course, the other 30% thinks both. So of course, the question itself tells you that, one of them is disruptive, the other is not. Now, the answer, of course, is Netflix is disruptive and Uber is not. And when I mentioned this, I was at another event when I did this similar, there was a senior executive, female executive, and they were surprised when I mentioned the answer. And the answer, why Netflix, the primary reason why Netflix is so disruptive, in my book, I explain also that because when you look at Netflix, the main competitor when Netflix came in, is Blockbuster in the US. And, Netflix came in, we did not go after the core competitors of. It's very interesting. Netflix actually offered itself to Blockbuster for 50 million at early stage, and it was a big mistake. Blockbuster did not pick it up, and Blockbuster is gone today; it doesn't exist anymore. But the shift, when you talk about the disruptive innovation, what happened is Blockbuster is a video rental. You know the typical video rental in Malaysia, or in Philippines, we have this called speedy video and all this simple video. You go to the video and you can, and then you rent a video, you pay the penalty, and Blockbuster has this policy of paying penalty each time you delay. And Netflix said, look, no, we go to do things differently, and they offer this a wider selection of content, all you can watch, on demand, low price, high quality, high convenience, approach. And they go after, and what they did was they go for segment. At that time, initially, when Netflix came, it's very small, very few organizations, very few customers were keen to subscribe because they used to, rent the video, go to the shop, and then, the video rental store, pick up a 4 or 5 video over the weekend, and then return the next thing. Netflix was very clear. They look at what the customer, it was a small customer segment at that time, and of course the internet has not really picked up. And what happened then, of course, Netflix used the AI, the algorithm, to study. They have the very powerful AI software which allows them to study each user preferences. And so that's why those of you who are familiar with Netflix, and when you're on your Netflix, they will tell you, okay, if you've watched this movie, perhaps you want to watch another similar movie. Because you have seen that movie, or because you like that particular actor, you would like to show, so they study your pattern and they look at, and what are sort of genre, the kind of movie, kind of drama, and they offer that to you. When you on your system, you on your Netflix account on the TV, and you can see your preferences. And Netflix use AI, for now machine learning. I mean, they use technology to disrupt the competitor, disrupt. And of course, today Netflix themselves been disrupted. If you look at Amazon Prime, it's got NBC and Apple TV, and many other new players are coming in try to disrupt Netflix. And I think they've yet the jury's still out. Netflix is the market leader, but again, we do not know what will happen. And Netflix is trying very, very hard to find new ways to reinvent. And one of the things that they do very well, they disrupt again. By developing new content, their content, they do see the word called Netflix original, come up. I mean, they invest, they develop, they produce their own content instead of relying on these studios, the movie studios, that produce the talks and so forth. So that is what Netflix is doing. Now look at Uber. Now Uber, what is innovative? What Uber did is they look at using the technology to help the taxi riders to make it easy. So everybody owns a smartphone, to Android. Okay, you have a phone, they develop an app. It's easy for you to Uber app anywhere in the same account, anywhere in the world. When I travel anywhere in the world, I use the same app. And I used to use that. In some country may not be available, like we said, because of regulations and so forth. But it is not, it's not really disruptive. In the sense that if you look at Uber, they do not go to what we call the blue ocean, the blue market, or overlooked markets. Or what they did is simply going after the taxi customers, offering a convenient. It is innovative for sure, but it's not very disruptive. And there's a difference between Netflix and Uber. In my book, I explain the concept, but of course, as I mentioned to you in 2015, in Harvard Business Review, what David Christensen talk about is that a lot of people don't understand. And this is, as most of you are students, entrepreneurs, doing your entrepreneurial studies, get it right. Get it right and learn. There's a link there. You can go in, to HBO and download free, read out. It's very important to understand. There is, McKinsey published a very interesting article in 2013 and talk about the disruptive technology and the impact and what we can expect to see in the economic value of disruptive technologies. Okay, and I won't go into. I think some of them. This was 2013. Today is 7 years later. Some are all real. Mobile internet, automation, IoT, iOS, cloud, advanced robotics, and there's another concept which is not there. And today is a reality called cobot. COBOT. Cobot, stands for collaborative robotic. And you can see that in Japan, in the US, where we have robots side by side with human being. In my book, again, I elaborate the importance of this technology because a lot of people are afraid they've been replaced by robot. There's certain things that robot cannot do that we can do as human beings, especially from a customer interfacing perspective. So we need to work with the robot. And for the mundane, the repetitive tasks, that automated processes can be taken care by a robot, but we need to work with it. So it's called cobot. Okay? Then you autonomous vehicle, both you see Google, Tesla, already started, even Mercedes-Benz. In Japan, we have Toyota, all have developed the autonomous vehicle. Google was one of the pioneers in Tesla. And it's very interesting that they're using machine learning, of course, to be able, and neural networks to learn about things around you. And we have drivers in Singapore. We have now on the trial in the university, National University of Singapore, National Technological University, where they're doing trial on this autonomous genomics. Even for cancer treatment, IBM supercomputer being used to help to define it. As a matter of fact, currently the pandemic, the research into pandemic, these technologies, the disruptive technology of the advanced AI has helped. The rest, 3D printing and so forth. So you can see that this is now becoming very common. Now, the challenge. So what is your challenge? So, one of the things that I found, entrepreneur, we need to shift our mindset. And also we need a business leader, both entrepreneur and business leader. So as an entrepreneur, you need to be a business leader. And you need to learn why Steve Jobs failed in the initial years. He was so focused on developing Lisa that he forgot about, when Apple listed, and of course, as you know, the famous story, how John Scully, he called John Scully, Steve Jobs called John Scully, the sugar water guy, because John Scully was from Apple, was from Pepsi. But very interesting, if you do not have that ability to develop this self-awareness that you may not be the best person to lead the organization, keep your venture. So you need to find someone else. And sometimes, and I'll talk about some of the failure as a leader, and I've taken my own mistakes over the years, and I'll talk about that. But this is a problem that we have. We think we know, and we think we know better than others, our staff. And I'll talk about concept called reverse mentoring of the younger entrepreneurial team that you can learn from them. And one of the problem is, we stick to the same business model. So every single day, my advice is you need to reinvent your business model, and every single day. This is what Jeff Bezos does. This is why I know right now. I used to be Jack Welch, he's passed on. Today, the leader that I have deepest admiration is the Satya Nadella, the third CEO of Microsoft. In my book, I have a case study on him and how he is able to transform the Microsoft by focusing on one particular competency, which is empathy. And he shared as entrepreneur, we need to have that. And I'll explain why later in a short while, because we need to be able to develop this customer centricity, the mindset that customer, PPT, and your internal customers first, that is your people. Take care of your people, take care of your entrepreneurial team, very important. And this is where I think we can learn a lot from both Starbucks, so again, another case in my book, Howard Schultz and Microsoft Satya Nadella. These two leaders, and we can learn a lot about how, and Howard Schultz is a true entrepreneur. And I don't have time, I can tell you stories about Howard Schultz. I did a study, part of my work, talking about leaders, you call disruptive leaders. You look at one of the very few leaders, like Howard Schultz, and again, why? Because of his experience, family, tragedy, struggle, and so forth. And we can learn from such leaders. Now, but how do you do that? How do you resolve the entrepreneurial challenge? As a founder, you need to be prepared. You would be the person that your team, you'll be the person that your co-founder, you'll be the person that your investors will look at. So how are you going to start redevelop yourself? And this is where my advice to all of you. Start thinking, start reassessing your state of the mind and local mindset. So now I'm going to ask you a question. Again, there's no right or wrong answer. Again, the poll. Name me one skill or competency. Skill, behaviors, attribute, if you want to put attribute, that you think is very critical towards developing the entrepreneurial capability or developing yourself as an entrepreneur when you face all the disruptive forces. What do you need to do? What do you need to develop? What sort of skills do you need to develop?
So here they are. Resilience, empathy, managing risk, flexibility, adaptability, risk-taking twice, courage, determination, agility, conservatism, very interesting, Professor, agile, perseverance, opportunity-seeking, resilient, mindful, critical thinking, risk-taking, and a lot of opportunity-seeking and risk-taking are two sides coming up. I like this. Happiness, Professor. Faith. Wow, soft skill, really spiritual skill, in fact, right? Courage, risk taker twice, VUCA leadership. They read your book. Patience, problem solving, determination. I like self-aware. Be critical, open for innovation, eagerness. Wow, optimism and eagerness, they're cousins. Innovativeness and open-mindedness, also cousin. Delegation, new one. Enthusiasm, being observant is important according to some. Innovative is, of course, the most important word coming up. And tenacity, nice word. Initiative.
Okay, good. Okay, I think most of you got it right. Happiness is important, and I'll share with you one of the early part of my career as a business professional before I go into entrepreneurship. And then when I even go into entrepreneurship, and one of my advisors always tell me the difference, learn from the bike, look at bicycles, the different spokes of life. And you need happiness, it depends how well you balance all the spokes of life, from financial, family, spiritual, business. So there are different part of the spokes of life that you need to value. I think all of you, most of you got it right, but I think what I like, that's what somebody mentioned, critical thinking. That's very important. And of course, VUCA leadership. VUCA itself is the volatility, uncertainty, complexity, ambiguity. In my book, chapter 2, I talk about the disruptive impact, the VUCA impact of COVID-19. And COVID-19 is indeed, look at the description of volatility, complexity, uncertainty, ambiguity. COVID-19 pandemic clearly demonstrate the disruptive impact of the VUCA. Now, there are many companies, as I said, I asked you for one, but I've done extensive research worldwide looking at leaders and also with the coaching, going to my global coaches worldwide under the Executive Development Associate EDA and under the IPMA and CE worldwide. So over the last 20 years, we studied what are some of the entrepreneurial and also business leaders, so both. So we look at what makes them different, what has been very successful, and then we look at the last I would say, since 2014, so for 6 years, 2014 when WEF published, and I will share, I don't think I have it in this presentation, but you can go to WEF and look at the disruptive impact of the digital, or they use the word fourth industrial revolution. Okay, the founder of WEF, Klaus Schwab, the founder and the chairman of WEF, wrote a book called The Fourth Industrial Revolution, and the Industry 4.0, which started as in Germany from the industry, automation, Siemens, Bosch, Daimler, and many of the German technology. And what we have found that those leaders in the digital transformation of their businesses, because of the impact, the disruptive impact, they're able to do it differently, successfully. And WEF did a survey, and it was published, I think, in 2008, 2006, 2008, 2 years, over two reports, looking at some of the competencies. And of course, then recently, over the last 5 years, Conferry, and we look at Deloitte. I've studied a lot. In my book, there's references about 400 different. The main research is about 200 over, about total of 400 research papers my team has, Disruptive Leadership Institute has studied. I myself have looked at all this and came out with 6 competencies. We call it the disruptive digital leader. And these competencies are also relevant, more relevant for entrepreneurial leaders, because you are talking about, especially if you are talking about disruptive innovation, leveraging on technology today, these are the set of competencies. First is disruptive mentality. What I mean by that is to be able to shift your mental model, to be able to be innovative driven. Okay, that's very important for disruptive mental agility. Second one is what all of you know, what we call the visionary entrepreneurial skills, which is creativity. And the creativity is different from critical thinking. So creative thinking and critical thinking are very different. Again, I don't have time to go through, but in the book I explain very clearly the difference. But creativity is easier. I repeat, creativity is easier as a skill to develop as compared to critical thinking, because it's a total different set of behavior attribute that you need to demonstrate. And we call it cognitive readiness. So it's where you have what I call mindfulness, focus, how to connect the dots, when you have different set of data, different set of, like what's happening today. If you look at COVID-19, it's impacting us. How do you read all those news report every day? And of course, number 4 that most of you mentioned in the chat box, resilience, change, adaptability. And I think agility, again, is very common. You see number 3, 4, 5, 6, all are related to agility. And it's very important. And number 5, empathy and social skills is important, because we're talking about, in today's disruptive leadership, we talk about customer centricity. If you need to develop a digital transformation strategy, you need to be able to work with your client, even before that, before the customer. I always advocate internally develop your team, make sure your team, you need to start with what we call the PPT, people before process and technology. And many people start focusing on the technology, and this is the biggest mistake that a lot of entrepreneurs, a lot of business leaders do. First thing is to get the best technology, and money can buy you all whatever resources you have, whatever funding that you have, invest in technology. Not necessarily. Not necessarily. Focus on the people, the talent, the capability first. Then look at the process to deliver what the customers want, customer centricity, and then using social skills, social intelligence, emotional social intelligence to be able to impact and influence your team, your partners, your network, and your customers. At the end of the day, it's about customers. So get your people first before your process and technology. And lastly, driving for success. As an entrepreneur, at the end of the day, what your investor is looking for, what you're looking for is results. So results agility. So how fast are we able to reinvent things when things are not going your way? That is important because we are stuck to our thinking, or this the way we believe. And it's very important to have values and belief, and I'll talk about that in a short time. But be prepared to choose. The results are not coming in, what you need to do. And that is the result agility. How do you choose? How do you reinvent? Where else can you? I will now move to the last part of my presentation about the pitfalls and lessons. I can talk about failure. I will not talk about success because success, I can tell you a lot of stories. I work everywhere in the world when I do keynote, when I present anywhere in the world over the last 20 years. One of the things that people say, oh, about success. When I talk about failure, wow, people start listening because it's very important to know. And I'm going to share my failure. Hopefully that you can benefit from it and you can do not make the same mistakes. I wish I had someone like me in my earlier days, 30 years ago, who can help me in my first venture in 1988. And when I started this applied healthcare system startup, after 10 years in healthcare, working for Carl Zeiss, Germany, working for Dell Technica, Jackson Jason, Pfizer, pharmaceutical, medical devices. So I decided to set up the first company called Applied Healthcare System to supply medical instruments to a new hospital in Malaysia. And it's in Cheras, both of you Malaysian will know Cheras. The hospital name was Nurian. It was a new hospital owned by the authority. But the biggest mistake I did was, and I'll tell you the failure. My failure here is very simple. Malaysia for political activity, for licensing, because I was given the award to a tender to supply equipment. One of the biggest problems, and I did not realize at that time, some of the equipment required licensing approval. Because I was assured that the hospital, when you have no problem, we will take care. It's, and the founders of the hospital, the all are politicians. In Malaysia, you very qualified politicians from those, government or government, linked companies. So I take the word from the founder. Okay, the CEO said no problem, we will take care of it. So they come to a lot of internal issues, change of owner, and I invested. At that time was about $105,000 to the business. I was blessed. My parents who loaned me the money, banks and students guarantor. But eventually, the business failed because the license to bring in import licensing, to bring X-ray machines, to bring urology scanners, and all those things that you require licensing, did not got approved. And again, very sad because, and I did not give, I got the contract, I was assured and get the business, but I forgot about the macro environment. See, we're talking about entrepreneurial venture, we talk about the pestle, the political, social, economic, technology, environment, legal, the macro environment. So please be mindful. Be mindful who are your partners, what are the prevailing regulations. Yeah, so we need to learn. So I did not do that. That's one. And it failed and cost me terribly. So I decided it was huge, and I, then worked for a few years and start thinking about the next venture. So I was pursuing an MBA, executive MBA at Bawany University. Professor Dan Kana, one of my professors for strategy, invited me with four of my fellow students from HP, from Apple, Oracle, and Sun Microsystems. So there's four technologies from the Bay Area, and I was the only one from Singapore. So we developed a business model which we call CBT, computer-based trading. It was ahead of its time. As you know, the internet only started the war of internet, or the browser they call it, between Netscape and Internet Explorer, Microsoft and Netscape. It only started in 1995, and with the Internet Explorer, Microsoft Windows 95. but internet did not take it up, did not took off until much later. But at that time, we were offering this computer-based training using CD-ROM. CD-ROM, but it was an only for client-server computing, with what we call the network systems, with HP at that time, DEC, digital equipment company, but we were ahead of this time. He failed. The company still exists, but the founder, Professor Dan Kala, is from the US. He was from the Bay Area, and we were often with San Jose, and we moved to Palo Alto, and then of course then he moved to Texas to brought the company. But if you go in Google or you go to ecranium.com, you still can find. Very interesting. You can go in there and look at it was very ahead of this time. And of course, we tried to adapt when the internet came in. But again, we're not able, the biggest mistake, again, is when you set up, we were very ambitious, we wanted to do something very innovative, but the market is not ready for it. So lesson number one, another lesson, besides the first lesson about being aware of the agro forces, the political dimension in countries that work, the political legal ramification. This instance is about the customers, about not spending time to understand whether the corporate customers, and we're targeting in the Bay Area, in the US, but again, we were ahead of this time. And we're not able to secure funding, and it was very challenging, very interesting. I was in the Bay Area learning from people, fellow students who were from all the big names in startup, and being in the Bay Area, Silicon Valley was fantastic. I enjoyed in Milpitas. I stayed in Milpitas, in San Jose, in San Francisco, network and meet people. I attended session where Steve Jobs, not interacting, but attended events when he was speaking. And there's one guy, all of you should Google and look for a guy that I learned a lot. His name is Guy Kawasaki. He was the chief evangelist at Apple. And Guy Kawasaki has a company called Garage.com, which provide a bootcamp for entrepreneurs. And some of you probably heard of him. Go and Google, he's still around. And lastly, so it was strong. I think I did my MBA, and then I came back. Then in between, I joined Hey Group. Started to go back to corporate. I said, okay, let's look for my executive MBA from Golden Gate. I managed to learn a role with Hay Group, and then with Cloud Corporation in Boston and the executive coaching, then with Mercer, then last corporate role with DBM. It's a global consulting firm which allow me to give the network, the knowledge, experience, and then I decided since 2001, I started to set up a small startup. Actually, at that time, my company name was called Bawany Associates. It was a small startup trying to go into e-learning. Then by that time, the internet revolution. But the problem is, again, do not have, and it was about timing. So you remember 2000 was the dot-com crash. It was timing. It's nothing to do with skill, but it's just timing. Unfortunately, the dot-com crash, the bubble, and I'm not able to secure funding. So my partner's in the US. So in 2001, as you probably know, I should probably know, it was the September 11 again in the market. Then 2003 SARS. So within 5 years, there were 3 major events that were very disruptive. Then, of course, in 2006, I was especially in the last corporate role with a company called DBM out of New York, and then they moved into, I remember exactly where in Boston. And then they decided, okay, we sold the company, and I set up my own called Center for Executive Education. That was my fourth venture, and this still around. I'm the CEO and founder, and we're an award-winning network of worldwide HR consulting, OD consulting companies. And then subsequently, I set up another venture on Center for Executive Coaching, which I'm a master coach with IPNA, International Professional Manager Association, to certify our program. And we have done 2 programs. One of them is in Malaysia, Johor Corporation, in Johor, with the company. And now, in July this year, I set up the Disruptive Institute with the backing of iGroup Asia Pacific, the chairman, Mr. Kunli, who believed in the idea of disruptive, was very supportive in the venture, invested, and we developed the institute to provide an opportunity for companies who wants to prepare the leaders for entrepreneurial, prepare leaders for the digital revolution. And what we do is we have programs that has been based on research-based content with faculty all over the world who come in and deliver the program for our client worldwide. Okay, so to sum up, what are the pitfalls? Again, we can dialogue. One is based on what I've told you the stories about self-awareness. Again, we sometimes we think we know. We all have blind spot, so be mindful of that. Humility. Be humble, you seek help, and this is where I learned a lot from my younger colleagues, especially today, even Gen Y, Gen Z, what called reverse mentoring. I learned a lot from my younger colleagues who someone guide me from the technological standpoint. And also, we need to be less overconfident. To be confident is important, self-confidence, but don't be overconfidence, less arrogant. Sometimes I myself, even myself and my parents, we think we know, but we were in a Bay Area. So sometimes we think, we know what we need to be done, and we think, well, nobody can tell us, we know best. So be less ruthless. I think we should always keep an open mind. And that's the next one, which somebody mentioned earlier in the chat box about optimism. Yeah, it's very important to have a sense of outlook. But sometimes we're so positive, we think we know as an entrepreneur, we think, we believe in what we believe, but we're not grounded to reality. So that is the very biggest problem that I faced when I tried to launch the e-learning, we call it CBT, computer-based training at the time. The reality is that the market is already, internet just started picking up, and we are not able to get the customers acceptance. So that's very important. Then the other thing about my advice about inside-out perspective. So my mistake was when I was looking at both the e-training and when I was looking at the AHS, Applied Healthcare System, I always look from internal, what we think. So we have the board or the entrepreneur, the founder, in the founding team, we know the market, we have done this with that. So we always look at inside perspective instead of go out and then look from customers, get from advice, get people to help us. And this is the problem. That's why the next point is very important. And I was very fortunate. I have a mentor. And both a mentor, I did not have a coach at that time, but I have a mentor. There's a lot different than mentoring and coaching. So I don't go into that. But very quickly, mentoring is someone more senior, more experienced, wiser, who can guide you, inspire you, who can tell you, look, what they have gone through, the lessons, both in corporate or in entrepreneurship, what they can guide you and help you. Whereas an executive coach is more about developing leadership skills, providing insights to how to be a better leader, So they're different set of interventions. So I think it's very important. While I have a mentor, I do not have a coach, and it costs. And at that time, and I was very unfortunate. So I make a lot of mistakes. I was very aggressive. I would say that I need to be more assertive, but not aggressive. But I was on the other side, more aggressive, and that created a lot of problems with my partners, with the customer relationship. And that brings to the second last part about importance of collaboration relationship. And as I mentioned earlier, I already mentioned most of this in my earlier talk about putting people, talent before process and technology. So you need to put your people first, your team ahead. That's important. And lastly, my final word. In 2016, the Peak magazine is a very prestigious magazine in Singapore, Malaysia. They have a different edition. The editor invited me to share my experience. I was coaching a lot of entrepreneurs in my work over the last, as executive coach over the last 25 years. I've coached many CEOs or C-suite leaders, CEOs, and also entrepreneurs. Many entrepreneurs in Singapore, Malaysia, Indonesia, even a couple of them from China, even one from Russia, US, what I've learned from this entrepreneur. It's very important when we talk about purpose and values. It's very important. You need to have a sense of purpose. And this is where I learned a lot from Howard Schultz, the founder of Starbucks. He has what called the True North. He is very clear what is his purpose. Because of his experience of the tragedy of his father, and he's able to mobilize and get people to believe in what we believe. That's very important. And there's a very good video most of you should watch called by, I'm sure some of you heard of the Simon Sinek. start with why. And we as entrepreneurs, we need to believe what we believe and get people to believe in us. And to do that, we need to really understand why we exist. And for the last one is exemplary leadership. And in the interview, I was talking about in the thriving in chaos in VUCA world. One of the biggest challenges that we have is that about not able to change. Well, your own purpose and values is important, but at the same time, we need to reassess and ask ourselves, are you agile enough to reinvent and to move and maneuver in the VUCA world? That was 2016. Today, we talk about the disruptive world, and it's the same. VUCA is disruptive. So the question is, are you ready to reinvent and ask yourself, what can you do differently? And remember, reverse mentoring, learn from the young. And I'm learning a lot of my students, my grad students, my full-time students who from Curtin University, and today, as Roger mentioned, I was appointed the IT Management School in Paris, runs a program globally, virtually program, an executive MBA on digital transformation. I'm learning some of the students, and I'm continuing to do that because that's where you learn a lot from the young.
The Bawany hacks. Number 1, be self-aware. So you mentioned lessons learned from failure, be self-aware. Number 2, be grounded. Be grounded in reality. Develop inside-out thinking. So you look inside, you think outside. That's number 3. Number 4, get a mentor or a coach right now, not when you become executive, it's too late. Number 5, collaborate. Build network. Collaborate and build network. Sage is another way you can network. You never know. You might find your business partner or startup founder here. Number 6, put people before process. Remember this, people before process. And number 7, I learned it from Professor Sawar, put talent before technology.